Friends and I have decided to start a soup club, and you're probably wondering what exactly is a soup club. Well, that's what this video is about. It's about sharing with you all the details of what it is to join and be a part of a soup club. And specifically in this video, I'm going to share the soup I'm making this month that I'm going to share with my friends at our special event. So let's get into it, let's get cooking, and let's get our soup on. The first thing you need to start with is your jars. I purchased these from Amazon. There's a link in the description box below on these specific quart jars that have plastic lids and metal lids. You just want to make sure you have one per person in your club. So the recipe I am making for our soup, can you ever guess? You got it. Tomato soup. But what is different about this one is that I'm going to roast all the vegetables. I've seen this. It's a viral recipe. I've been wanting to make it. I have 3 kinds of tomatoes here. I have tomatoes on the vine, I have grape tomatoes, and I also just have your regular beefsteak tomatoes. So we're gonna get all those just put out on a pan. I'm gonna chop up some onion. I'm gonna get my garlic whole. I'm just gonna slice it up, put it all on the pan, show you as I go. So I'm cutting up my tomatoes. I'm just cutting them. The ones that are big, I'm cutting them in fourths, and the ones that are a little smaller, just in half. Now I have about 6 pounds of tomatoes here. The recipe calls for about 3 to 4 pounds, and I am doubling the recipe because my family is not going to let me make this much tomato soup and not have any on hand. So I know I have to double this recipe. So you'll see that this will produce 2 sheet pans, and that is because I'm thinking about my family as well as the soup club. Now let's talk about our soup club. As I chop the heads of garlic here, I just cut the tops right off because they're going to go on the sheet pan as is. So our soup club, it was totally spontaneous, and a club sounds like many members, but there's only actually 4 of us, and it was because we were at an event and we were talking about food and our love of food and cooking, and we just happened to know the weather was getting cooler. We were getting into soup season, and one of my friends just had mentioned, let's start a soup club. Let's get together. Let's do this. Let's make soup for each other. And when we leave, we all have a different type of soup to take home and freeze and share with our families. I love the idea because I don't tend to make as many soups in the winter, but I would love, and why is it that when somebody cooks, it's always better? So I love this idea, and we just kind of came together. What it took was, you know how people say, let's get together, let's do something, and it doesn't tend to happen because things get busy, and before you know it, it's days and then weeks and then months later, and you're like, remember we were gonna get together, and it just didn't happen. Well, it usually takes that one person who remembers and actually just sends a text, right? They just send a text and say, which dates work for you? Which dates can we all get together? And she picked a couple. We all decided. Then we didn't even decide which soups we were going to make. It actually worked out so perfect that we all made a different soup. Now, what I'm also putting on here is thyme sprigs, and I put a onion. So I chopped up 2 onions, and I'm spraying with my olive oil spray, and I'm putting a generous amount of sea salt on here. I do the same thing for my second sheet pan with the sprigs of thyme, the fresh thyme, and I also am spraying generously with the olive oil and then giving a good sprinkle of the sea salt. And yes, I do leave the stems on the tomatoes just as is. I just think it's going to add some flavor and just easier, honestly. I put it in a 425-degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes, and look how beautiful they come out, completely roasted, a beautiful char, and that's what's going to give this soup that extra richness and flavor. Looking good, so good. Let's go ahead, strip our thyme. Go ahead and get this off the vine. And let's squeeze our garlic. Now we're going to take all our tomatoes, garlic, and onions, and we're going to put it into our blender. You could also do this on the stove and just simmer it in a pot and then use an immersion blender, but my Pampered Chef Blender does it all. So I, of course, am going to put it into here. Isn't this spatula the best? It is perfect for this. To grab, get under there, just like that. Perfect. I love this. And it's perfect. You can just collapse it, close it up. Great for storing, easy to open and close. And perfect for something like this. Save the rest of this for our other portion. I'm only gonna put a little chicken broth in. There's a lot of fluid in there. I'm only gonna do a little bit. Literally like 1/4 a cup at this moment. And I'm gonna keep an eye on it and see if it needs more. The soup setting can do the whole thing. It will even heat this up. It's a quick cooking blender. It means the base is a heating element. So it will get up to 210, I think, 220 degrees while it's pureeing the soup. So it's taking the place of putting this on the stovetop and then either putting an immersion blender inside of that soup pot or having to put it into a blender anyway. I'm doing two things at once and we're ready to go. We're gonna get this on our soup setting and just push the button, and actually it'll get up to 212 degrees. So I'll let it do its thing. I actually realized I didn't take the juices from this platter, and that's where a lot of the flavor is. So I'm just getting these vegetables into my other tray, and then I'm gonna get all these juices. So I did stop it to get these juices in here. Okay, that's the flavor. Now I'm gonna get it back on to soup setting. Now it's ready. After my soup got up to temperature, which took about 20 to 30 minutes, it is now ready for the fresh basil. I added the whole leaves in, and I'm actually going to just pulse this manually and just do that for a couple of seconds. At this time, you can also add a 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream if you want it even creamier. Our soup is now complete, and we are ready to add it to our jars. Now remember, I made a double batch, which means I actually had to do the blending process twice, and the double batch actually filled up the 4-quart jars just fine, and it left enough for another jar for my family. I let these cool before putting on the lids, and I leave a little space on top in case they want to freeze it. I also clean around the edges to get any drips removed before I package this up. Now that it's all cooled, I am ready to package it in my insulated bag. I did decide to go with the colored lids. I thought they looked better, and I'm adding a container of sour cream so we can add a dollop of that when we get to the party. In addition to that, I also packed these cheddar cheese crisps, which I thought would be great to add to the soup when they're ready to be served. I am now ready to go to the party. All the soup group members have arrived, and we are now getting all our soups out to be sampled and shared. We decided to host alternatively at each home, so we are at our hostess's house here who's making her sausage soup. And here we have each of our jars, so remember 1 jar of each soup to each member, and then a 4th jar goes for sampling tonight. Can't wait to dig in. This is the Italian sausage soup with spinach and beans, and it is going to be served with homemade cornbread that our hostess has made from scratch. And then we're gonna sprinkle on top some Parmesan cheese, and of course we have wine to be sampled as well. With each of our soups, we provide the recipe, so each of us can make this anytime we'd like. Now it's time to dig in. Look at the cheese in this sausage Italian soup. It was so good, so delicious. Then the next soup we are tasting is a spinach and coconut soup, which has a cream base, and it was divine. Then it's on to our minestrone soup, which has the noodles and so many vegetables. Such a great hearty soup. A jar of each to take home. I cannot wait to share these with my family. I even ended up with some of the roasted tomato soup that I made, and I am thrilled. What a fun night of friends and fellowship. I hope you're inspired. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to subscribe.